Welcome to The Choice to Grow. I'm Scott Schwenk. Through these dialogues, we'll explore fresh perspectives and discover practical tools for navigating a thriving life that adds value wherever we are. I'll introduce you to innovators and creators from across our world who embody what it means to cultivate growing as a way of life. Let's prepare together. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath briefly as you soften your shoulders and soften the soles of your feet and palms of your hands. Then exhale like you're releasing tension and setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Now let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to The Choice to Grow. I'm delighted to bring you somebody that I've known for quite some time now, and we met early on in quarantine through an emergent dialogue group. Alex Olshonsky is a somatic therapist, coach, and writer working at the intersection of deep healing, integrated leadership, and spiritual freedom. He's the co-founder of Natura Care. It's a nonprofit addiction program that's harnessing psychedelics. And he's also the founder of Sons of Now, which is a men's group for the meta-modern man. He also writes Deep Fix, which is a popular Substack newsletter, and his essays have appeared in a wide range of publications internationally. A dozen years ago, while he was working in Silicon Valley, Alex was gripped by a polysubstance addiction that nearly killed him. That crisis became a real turning point. It plunged him into psychology, the healing arts, and the Dharma. Including, he completed his studies with Hakomi, and we'll talk a little bit about what Hakomi therapy is. It's quite fascinating and integrated. Today, he helps others navigate their own transformation with precision, compassion, and deep respect for their innate intelligence. For over a decade, Alex has trained in contemplative, therapeutic, entheogenic, and awakening-based traditions. He is a certified Hakomi practitioner whose coaching helps people recognize how unconscious patterns shape their experience and open to the freedom and vitality that have always been waiting within. His work also draws on internal family systems, also called parts work, motivational interviewing, integral theory, that's the work of Ken Wilber, and yogic embodiment. Through his writing, teaching, and entrepreneurial work, he's helped so many people reclaim their lives from numbing, distraction, and self-avoidance. He is living in Oakland Hills with his partner, Grace, and their new baby boy. So that's a full life. In my experience of working with Alex, we quickly transitioned from the emergent dialogue group where we were really talking about, it started because of the Black Lives Matter movement and a whole bunch of people coming together that Alex invited to really look at our perspectives freshly and be willing to challenge each other's perspectives to have a wider embodied compassion and skillfulness in life. Shortly after that, he became a client for a while and then moved really, really deep into his Hakomi training and so many other things. So without further ado, I just want to get right into it with Alex. He's one of the most clever people I know, very nimble-minded, very open-minded, and very curious. Reminds me so much of me in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, Alex, I'm just so happy to have you here and see where this wants to go together. But first, share with us a little bit about the polysubstance addiction transition. You're so good with words, maybe even just polysubstance, more than one.
Yeah, Scott, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I was reminded as you were sharing when we originally met, you came into the dialogue groups that we were hosting. And I remember your perspective really elevated what we were doing in that group. And so I appreciated that. And I just remembered that, like getting into David Baum and on dialogue. And so, yeah, kudos for that. And it's a good reminder that polysubstance is maybe a little bit jargony. It is a technical addiction term, but what it does mean is multiple substance. And so I think the reason I use that is because to let people know that it wasn't just one thing. It was many, many things that I had a very severe, debilitating relationship with that ultimately ended up consuming pretty much every facet of my life. And so
what were the obvious notes to you that it was debilitating?
Yes. So I mean, in this, we can go as deep as you want here, but I'll just do my best. When I was from a young age, I looking back, the threads were obvious that I had addiction. But growing up in a like party oriented environment, it didn't seem like that big of a problem. And then even in college, that became an identity. It didn't seem like a major problem. It wasn't presenting in a problem in the way that I thought it eventually would, or I realized it eventually would. And so basically, when I was a young man, when I was 25 or so, living in the Bay Area, working in tech, I had been subsumed by tech. I started waking up in the morning with cold sweats, withdrawal, leg tremors, severe physical withdrawal symptoms, mostly from the opiates at that time. Eventually, I faced withdrawal from other narcotics as well. But it was at that moment when I was like, wait, something's really wrong here. And I had no tools, no framework to understand what was happening with me. And so I literally just thought that I was dealing with a physical, biological, chemical problem. I took too many of these painkillers that produced a negative physical effect. And if I stopped that, I wouldn't have any more problems. Like I had just gotten myself into this very biological uh, dilemma that I didn't know how I ended up in. And like I didn't, I was like, I'm not a drug addict or an alcoholic. Like that's not me. I just have this problem with opiates. So that's really how it started. And then from there, it just got worse and worse. And for the first several years, I sought support in secret because I was very ashamed. I didn't want anyone to know about this, even though for those closest to me, it was getting increasingly obvious. And so I sought medical treatment in secret, again, believing that just what I was dealing with was a physical problem. And so the paradigm I was in was like, you go to a doctor when you have a problem. And so that's what I did. And I tried doing Suboxone treatment, which is basically an opiate antagonist, a way to safely wean off opiates without experiencing what can sometimes be very, very, very debilitating and painful withdrawal. And that just process continued and continued, and I was at times get off for a little bit, but ultimately it continued, and I dug myself deeper and deeper into a hole where then I became addicted to um, amphetamines, benzodiazepines, so like Xanax. And when I say amphetamines, it was really Adderall, cocaine. And I was essentially treating my body like a chemistry lab, taking uppers during the day, taking the Xanax and the benzos to take the edge off, and painkillers throughout, and sleeping pills at night, horse tranquilizers. I mean, you really you name it, and it was quite intense. And while this was all happening, I was somehow holding together a career in technology, and so externally it seemed like things were going okay, but internally it got worse and worse. And then yeah, the consequences continued until I hit my breaking point, in which I took the choice to grow. When thinking about and there's, I'm happy to double click on any of that there, but
Yeah.
there's a lot, and so I'll pause.
What's really arising to ask you about is when you hit what you're calling your bottom, and that's different for everybody, like
Hmm.
okay, something's got to change and it's got to change now moment.
Hmm.
Where or how did you notice, or when, grace, the power of grace? I don't mean the name of your wife or your partner.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, when did you notice grace, and
It's
how?
it's a really good question. It's a lot easier to notice the grace in hindsight.
Sure.
At the time, so what happened was, basically I had been through failed secretive treatments for many times. I had spent all my money. I'd gone into six figures of debt. I had lost jobs. I had basically got into the point where, and I was pawning electronic, like I was literally living a life that someone with my sort of background from who had hustled his way into the Ivy League and was working with a very shiny tech career, wasn't supposed to be doing the things that I was supposed to be doing, and yet I found myself in that position. And so at a certain point, I had literally no more money to access. And I was, as you mentioned, a clever guy, and I found ways to take out loans and to, there's a lot of ways you can get money until you can't. And so I had exhausted that resource. I had the physical withdrawal was so bad that at a certain point with this type of deep addiction, your body just the high only lasts for a few hours, and then the crash is just so strong. And so if you don't have an endless supply, like you're just going to be in constant pain. And so I was experiencing just like really deep emotional, physical, and psychological pain in the body. And at that time, I had somehow gotten another very sexy job at the time, which was as a job at Slack, which is a big innovative Valley darling. And I had lost that job. I had after only being there 3 months, and that thing was going to be the thing that saved me. And I just found that out. And then at the time, I came home and told my now ex-wife about it, and that was very difficult. And it felt like she was just like, really more of this. And it felt like at that moment, I realized that I had no other options, where I had no money, no job, a marriage. It was a fresh marriage that was teetering on the verge of collapse. And I had nothing else to do. And so that's the moment where I was really brought to my knees. And I remember a specific moment just in the living room on my knees, crying, and just literally, it's the quintessential bottom moment where I was like, I'll do anything. How do I don't even know how to live. I don't know how to handle my life, and I will try something. And so that certainly was grace for me. And at the time, it felt like agony, but I had been so thoroughly and sufficiently humbled, which is what I needed for a guy like me who was able to cut corners and to keep a charade going, that I was still managing to keep things together. And then it was so embarrassing for me to like lose another job, to not have money, to not be able to handle life like that. I think I was 27, 28 years old at the time. And I was really, really embarrassed. And yet that was the humbling moment that I needed to just be like, I'm open to help, and I'm open to trying new things. And so when I think of grace, I think of like, yeah, letting this current of life carry you. And I think that was probably the first honest moment I had in my life. And so that
Mhm.
was a long answer.
Beautiful. I mean, really helpful. Beautiful in its painfulness. Beautiful in the sense of like, I feel like it can open all of us who are listening to really introspecting and going, where have I been engaging in any behavior that's harmful to myself or another and have been unwilling or unable to stop? And what did I do about it, or what am I going to do about it? When we were in the green room for the podcast, we were talking about, you were mentioning the addiction to thought, which I've definitely been observing and watching. I've had so many clients over the years who are in some stage of healing the addiction process or the
Mhm.
addiction cycle. And I remember early on, I think I had just moved to this apartment where I'd done so much work in person with private clients, having this realization as I was sitting with another client who was in recovery, that there's not a distinction between what people in the 12-step world call normies and people who are so-called addicts. Like, we all have an addiction until we don't, particularly, and it begins with believing untrue thoughts and grasping at things that are temporary, which all forms are, to get something that seems missing or wrong. That fundamental step of like, where am I projecting that a person, place, or substance can give me something that seems to be missing. I mean, barring like food and water and, hugs and like that. And some people would argue that sex is a basic need, but that too can get twisted. So where are you around all that at this current moment in your observation of yourself and clients?
Yeah, I appreciate that framing quite a bit, and because it's what I've learned through this process is that, yeah, we always are chasing some sort of external object to bring us happiness, and I think everyone does that. And so the way I orient around addiction is, as you pointed out, it's not just the people in church basements or huddled up on the side of the street who are dealing with addiction, but especially in modern society with technology, like we're all swimming in this sea of consumerism and distraction. And so there's the little there are the so many ways in which modernity can distract us externally, but then like what we're talking about and you're pointing to here is the deeper realization is that there is a compulsive and often unconscious hooking into the story and into thoughts. And once you realize that, like, oh, wow, like I've actually just been fully identified and enmeshed with something that I'm telling myself, and often that these stories are have some degree, until we are fortunate enough to work on it, some degree of a negative core belief, like I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm wrong or small or insufficient in some way. And so, yeah, I think with other folks, I noticed that it can be really difficult to actually chip away into the identification with thoughts and the thought structure. However, that's where the biggest change can happen.
Well, in terms of stage development, as people who I study the stages of adult ego development psychologically through the work of Terry O'Fallon, whose work stands on the shoulders of Suzanne Cook-Greuter, and that we move through stages like, your kid is in a first person perspective. Everything is me for that first person perspective. There's no separation. So there's not like, this is daddy's glass. No, it's all mine. It's all mine.
Right. Right.
Um, and then we move on up if all things go well. But many people can, according to the research, especially in our country, tap out at a third person rational perspective. And the research seems to bear out that to become aware of my own thinking only starts to barely develop at the end of a third person perspective. Fourth person perspective is still the leading edge in this country. According to statistics, it's new. It's like that's where somebody first actually gets interested in shadow work and develops the metacognition, the ability for me to think about my thinking or observe in action my emotions and maybe begin to course correct. So, how do we address the addiction to thought itself with people who aren't yet there developmentally to have that recognition?
That's a great question, and that's a big one. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it, for one. But what I've found that is often the most or one of the most effective gateways is the body, and because so thoughts are happening in some sort of container, and that container is this body. And the body, if you go from of course a deeper level, it doesn't just end with the soma or the skin, but it actually can extend really just into the whole space. But what I've found can be really helpful is to just allow people to first, when there are a lot of thoughts happening, to ground into the feet, the back body. Something that's really big in Hakomi is working
Take
with the
us right
back.
through it just briefly so we can experience it, all of us together. Take us through a bit of just simple grounding through the body.
Yeah, yeah. And so one of the things that I might do first is just taking a deep breath in through the nose, noticing how that builds a slight suspension in the head, and then keeping that suspension lifted, just letting everything else from the shoulders, neck down just sink into the seat. And as you do that, you can really feel your back body making contact with the chair if you're sitting. And then just spend a moment really noticing how your back is supported. when we root into the back body, it signals safety to the brainstem. And so it really is this great way to just slow down. And then you can notice the soles of the feet, the hands. And from here, you can see how this awareness can toggle from many different places within the body, just so effortlessly prompting you from the back body to the hands to the feet. And you can see in this way that you can use the body as a resource. And so just something like that gets can be a big unlock for people where they don't even actually understand this very basic innate human capacity to toggle awareness from different parts of the body. And when you do it like that, it creates what, and we call this also somatic resourcing, where something can be going on really intense in the head or even in another part of the body, but there's always pockets within the body that are at least neutral. And then typically there are often, when you pay close enough attention, pockets that feel pleasant or positive. And so that when someone is really thought identified or in that hasn't grokked a fourth person perspective, I think that the getting some basic skill building in this domain can be really useful, because once you can bring awareness to these different parts of the body, you can then begin to observe the thoughts from the awareness that's holding it all. But you tell me, how does that sound for you, Scott?
It sounds very similar to what I would prompt and guide with my own clients and students in my courses. I teach the 6 points of softening. Like softening, imagine you have a fist that's really tight and you're opening it just with your mind,
Uh-huh.
bringing that feeling through the soles of the feet, palms of the hands, the corners of the eyes, the region inside and around the ears, the tongue, and all the muscles of the pelvic floor groin region. And then with that, once that's established, to radically slow the exhales. And with each exhale, have the feeling that one is setting down a heavy burden, like coming in from the airport with a suitcase, setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Just make it up that it's easy and just stay with that and start to get a taste. And I feel like with newer students or clients who are earlier in their development, touch it, let it go, talk about something else, come back, touch it again, let it go, touch it, let it go. Many small recognitions over time.
Yes. Yes. Right. That's such a good point. And something that I do often, especially in my one-on-one work, is a really great way to do this for someone who's very new to it is just to be like, hey, what are you feeling in your body right now?
Yeah.
And you just pause and you just continually every 10 minutes or so at least invite that invitation. And what you'll find is what I found is people who never look in that way, they actually almost always, even if they have a lot going on and there's a lot of hardship, it's enjoyable, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like what is it that I'm feeling?
Yeah. It's a
And
revelation for so many people, like whose attention and senses have been unknowingly, they've been just going out to actually get permission to rest in the moment and in the structures of the body and just the physicality of the chair and the floor is like a moment of freedom.
yeah, yes,
And I
I
had to
and
really
I
slow
love
things
your
down. Oh, sorry.
oh, good. No, I was just saying I love your 6 points of softening, because I think that was something that when we were working together, I remember you would always point to that, but it really took a few years for that to really land, how important it is to relax the body. And one of the ways that I've been working with is this sinking in feeling, which I guided a little bit, where you just allow the exhales where everything just feels like it's sinking, like you're
Yeah.
almost like if you were imagining that you were holding a big water balloon with some space between your hands, and that the bottom of it would just sag down into the seat or into the earth. And
Yeah.
there's something just really subtle about just, even though it almost can just be setting the intention to just like sink, and that seems to do something to the nervous system, prompting a ventral vagal response and actually slowing things down. And what's also interesting about that sinking in method is that apparently there's a host of research that shows that one of the best way to develop and grow into stages of meditative growth are to sink in whenever you notice a glimpse or an opening. And that
Yeah.
sinking in really means just basking or allowing attention to rest on.
Dissolves grasping. It dissolves that energy of chasing and grasping so quickly.
Right. Exactly. Right.
And all the
Yeah.
other benefits like building proprioception, interoception, the ability to know where my body is in space without having to look, and then becoming more nimble with the body in space. Like so many benefits, the ability to like go beyond ordinary thought mind into awareness itself. For me, the path is so simplified, whether it's growing up or waking up, that the only barriers aren't barriers. They're held forms of tension mentally, physically, or in the field of energy around the body that can be released really, really simply, that actually are self-resolving in the space of relaxation. Like my teacher Sally Kempton said it from the get-go, and that's what really helped me enter and get meditation, that even advanced practitioners don't relax the body enough. That the whole thing is, how deeply can I relax into the body? And not just when there's an intentional practice that I want to benefit from, but like in a conversation or in an email situation or whatever. And I remember the first time somebody was cueing that sinking in, but including the organs, the interior organs, like
Oh.
going through that, like started with the physical body, the feet pressing into the floor. We were laying down, knees up, the back is relaxing into the floor, the head. And then it was like the digestive organs are finding their place. The brain is sinking into the earth. Like all, oh, wow, it was like revolutionary for me. I didn't realize the level of tension that seemed to be held in the nervous system around the organs.
That's super cool. That reminds me, yeah, one of my favorite prompts is around letting the eyes really settle and sink into the socket. But I'll have to play with that one, the brain and the stomach. And you also you talked about the clenching the fist and letting it go. And I think that's the thing that is probably, there's no better pointer than that, because it really is that simple. It's not something that you do; it's something that you stop unconsciously doing, which is gripping and holding.
And then, so for me, I've had the relationship with a lot of folks, and sometimes myself too, that the idea of stopping is threaded through with early life criticism. Just stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop it. And if I can't stop it, or I don't feel like I can stop it, then I'm in self criticism, all very, very quickly. Whereas I like to bring in Daniel P. Brown's work with healing adult attachment wounds. So, like, can I bring in the 5 resources of healthy attachment? Can I bring in, like, irradiate my own body mind, or imagine ideal enlightened parents sitting with me, radiating me like the sunshine with safety and protection, attunement. I see you seeing me. I know you see me. I don't have to explain myself. Soothing and comfort, express delight and support and encouragement for my best self. And just weaving through those 5 again and again and again, there's more willingness of the scared parts to trust it's okay to relax and something bad's not going to happen. Because there are a lot of people I've encountered that relaxation that their neighbor is like really benefiting from and just like, whoa, this is the best thing ever. For them, it's terrifying and confronting, let alone to close their eyes, because they have a body memory that when I relaxed, something bad happened. That's the story.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that what that reminds me is that for I was someone who started very much where I had to summon a lot of doing energy and a lot of activity in order to almost like hack my way into relaxation. And so you're right to point this out, because what I'm describing now of just being able to like relax my body, and even as you talk about relaxing the organs, I can feel something shifting in me. But that definitely wasn't always the case. With my disposition and having the type of recovery that I went through, I had to do a lot of activity like to almost to be a little bit more vigilant and rigorous in my trying to relax and trying to get well. Um, And so I do think that there is this also like a developmental journey around it, where it's like it's okay if you have to at times feel like you're trying to let go or attempting to soften, because eventually that will start happening on its own.
Well, permission to recognize that we can be, I can be on a learning curve, that I don't have to have something mastered the first time or the 20th time I'm learning it, that I could ongoing, I'm still, all these many years later, since those 6 points came to me in one meditation, I'm still learning from it. In the same way that I'm still accessing greater and greater depth from the first empowered Sanskrit mantra I received when I was 22, I'm 53 now. I'm still finding more and more and more and more and more and more. So for me, it's beneficial to go, okay, can I really just remind myself it's okay to be in a learning curve?
That's, yeah, really beautiful. And reminds me, I appreciate you bringing in Daniel Brown's, it's the ideal parenting protocol.
Yeah,
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 I've done only brief forays into that, but it seems very like I wish I was exposed to that earlier, because even just reminds me of like how an ideal parent would totally support and remind you like, hey, you're just learning,
yeah.
like you'll get better. Yeah, just keep softening, keep it. Yeah, you're doing great.
Well, and Alex, my favorite thing, I'm actually giving it as a set of instructions in the current course I'm creating, as I give it, which is to do it in the mirror. I think we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about eye gazing in the mirror. We've
Yeah.
both had, I know you've talked about, we've had tremendous experiences doing it with others, but to be doing it in the eyes in the mirror, my take on it, and I don't have third party research on this yet, is that my eyes don't know the difference between me looking in the mirror and radiating great love and all those 5 qualities of healthy attachment, or somebody else doing it. My eyes are just receiving the light impulses and the reflection back of that, because I do feel that we are relational creatures. I think that's why so much healing and corrective emotional experience happens in the therapeutic, 2 chair work or whatever, however it's constellated, or with somebody who's got a secure attachment that we become friends or lovers with, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But we can use deity, we can use an imagined ideal parent figure, we can use the field of awareness, but like the thing is to consistently practice, because how many years do I have of going the other direction?
Right. Yeah.
And not only for my own sake, this is the piece that I'm really finding ways to articulate with people, is like, there is nothing about us that is separate from the whole field of aliveness of the multiverse. And I can see more and more in my own experience that most of our pain and suffering is being in the illusion that we're separate, that we're the doer, and that we're fundamentally flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 illusions thread into a rope that is basically feels like it's choking us until we actually get to see another perspective and experience. Like, wait, I could relax my way through this project and get more done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sinking into the Tao, or just letting the current of life carry. And that also is something that I feel, once to tie it into what we were talking about earlier, once the addiction to thought begins to loosen, there is this space, and that space or presence can be just this beautiful dropping in attunement, and just to be like, oh, like, wait, I don't have to try as hard. I This thing is doing itself. And that's been another, just sort of insight or practice that's been really alive for me lately, is just noticing that reality, this thing is turned on. It's already happening. The field is here, right? I
Yeah.
didn't turn it on. I'm not making your beaming face show up. It's just here. The sounds arising effortlessly. The whole visual field with all of its details and intricacies, which is really, like, when you zoom in, are pretty mind boggling, just to see what, like, how high 4K this whole thing is. And not just 4K, but just the precision engineering of the universe to allow for this thing to be showing up here. Like once that like has that's been really doing something for me where it's like, oh, okay, if this is all just happening, maybe I don't have to work so hard and get
Yeah,
myself bunched into such a knot, because that's something that I'm still working on. I have
me too.
that type 3 Enneagram energy, which I very much had and I mentioned, and that propelled me out of recovery. I think the next sort of phase of learning is really, okay, like how can I relax even more just throughout my day and soften that habitual energy of I have to strategize, plan. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you. I notice, and I've been noticing a lot more lately because I've been taking time to observe it more, that when there's a body sensation that's not comfortable or downright uncomfortable, like an anxious, I'm talking something that more seems emotionally driven. Maybe it's slightly biological in terms of maybe I'm hungry and I don't realize it, or you know, but that the habit is for the tissue, the body to contract around that sensation. And then
Yes.
it's just more intense. So it's like this coming in like a loving parent and going, okay, it's okay. It's safe to relax everything around that area and just be with it and breathe into it and feel it fully without a story. And it will move. It doesn't seem like it right now, but it will move. I'm
Yes.
here.
Yes. Yeah, that one too, that has been a practice for me lately. In particular, like a crux that's been happening for me is that, especially with parenting, I've been having trouble where in general, I'm very sensitive these days and don't need much caffeine, but some nights and some days I'm just exhausted and I get into that classic dance of having too much and then noticing like uncomfortable sensation generally in the midsection and chest area. And it's uncomfortable. There's no other way to describe it for me because I don't really need that. Yeah, I'm very sensitive. I have a lot of energy. And so to what you're describing, what I've tried to notice is just that there's space around that discomfort or sensation. And then eventually that seems to just allow it to wind down and to soften, and just trying to like remind myself that there's an awareness that's holding whatever it is that's happening there, and that that spacious awareness has its back, so to speak, and it's just gonna allow it to do its thing. And so that's been it's I'm glad you mentioned that. This is a good reminder for me these
Well, and
days
also what
where
you're pointing out is really cogent for me, which is, you're talking about it with caffeine. I'm literally this week exploring it around my workout supplements. And they're not
Mhm.
supplements that have caffeine in them, but they work with the hormones and whatnot, like Tonka Ali, Tribulus, um, and a few others that I don't even remember the names of that are in a stack. And I was noticing my body in those same areas you talk about, getting this kind of discomfort, anxiousness. And I'm like, well, you know what? And I didn't want to last week because of my story about how it was helping me have more strength at the gym.
Mhm.
You know what? This is not worth it. I'm willing to be skinny and small if that's what it takes to be at peace. This week, at the recording of this episode, there was an episode I just released with my friend Dr. Alejandro Junger about gut health. And it's like, okay, well, what if some of the things I'm experiencing that I've been trying to medicate with substances actually wouldn't be problems for me if I eliminated that food that creates inflammation in my body, or if I increased the right micronutrients that I didn't know I was deficient in until I got the blood work, or whatever, or reducing my caffeine intake and increasing my water and hydration and my breathing to give me more energy, or whatever. Like some things, I think we don't realize that we are creating the problem. I have been creating the problem with my choices of food or even entertainment, this enervated state that I'm then medicating unnecessarily. I could just shift gears into a different way of eating that's less inflammatory or less caffeine.
Totally. And what you're talking about reminds me how when I feel very fortunate these days that the main sort of addictions that I deal with are probably caffeine and food, and how easy it is to be in that dance I described of like feeling like I need caffeine, when in reality that touches on so many things of like, what's it like just to be tired and to have that be okay, right?
What's
Without
it like to run the body from awareness rather than ordinary mind? And what kind of resource can that bring in when I'm tired? That might
right.
sound really abstract to some of you listeners, but like there's a big difference between ordinary thinking and awareness. And the same Daniel P. Brown studied it in labs and fMRIs and proved over and over again. And I think his peer duplicated research, awareness moves exponentially faster than thought. And we can access this awareness that's normally tuned into thinking for so many things, including energizing the body when the body is depleted. Not long term, you need to take care of the body, but
Totally right. And so when you allow yourself to notice like, oh, this is just what's happened, like to that what we were talking about earlier, how like this is just what's happening, I'm tired today, and I can just be aware of that, and I can just allow that to be. And I'd also don't have to buy into a cultural story that like I must have energy and that being tired isn't okay. And when you really look at it, like what is it being tired is really just a bundle of sensations that you then attach a label to. I'm tired, that's not ideal, right? And so there's the story there, and there's this addiction, and like, yeah, some of the interesting science around pain suggests that it's really all based on the stories we're creating around it. And so um what I was, I think, getting at earlier is that when it comes to breaking some of these patterns, what I've found is that the consequences need to get to a place where you're finally like, oh, wait, it's just not worth it to keep eating. Let's say it's the whatever food it is that's inflaming your gut and making you unwell, or taking the supplement and then feeling strung out after the gym. And that is the same principle that applies to, alcohol and all the hard drugs, where eventually the consequences get to the point where like, wait, why am I doing this? I actually prefer my baseline natural state to whatever this jumbled process is that I'm doing. And once
yeah.
that insight dawns, like that's when change can really happen, because you recognize that, oh, there's another way. And so I think that what I wanted to just highlight in those examples is like, it takes really feeling and having awareness of the consequences and the pain in order to recognize that you're willing to try something else.
A little bit of a shift, but really including all of this. How does Hakomi work with a client? What is the basic understanding of Hakomi as a form of psychotherapy and healing?
hmm Yeah. The beautiful thing about Hakomi is that I could have just met someone, and without them necessarily needing to recite everything that happened in their day and their week, without being like, oh, this weekend we went to the farmer's market, and then I got in a fight with my partner, and then I was feeling angry, and my boss is so annoying. You don't actually have to hear that whole story, because the fundamental premise is that we'll drop into a state of mindful awareness, guiding into the body, and then just wait and to see what the body is going to elicit and bring up for us to explore. And so what's really nice about that is that, in the same way that there are poker tells where you can be hearing the words that someone's speaking, but you can feel something else entirely based on the gestalt of their presentation. Um, in Hakomi, we trust the body, and we trust that the body is actually communicating vastly more information than our words ever can. And so when you meet with someone, what you do is essentially first you have to create a container of just supreme safety and trust. And then because a person will be essentially coming into a really mindful state. And Hakomi relies on present moment experience to then unfold into what's happening in the body. And you'll just keep following the prompts of what's arising. And the Hakomi practitioner will use um, uh, language, movement, and experiential prompts and creative ideas to basically elicit um, and unfold more of what is happening in that organic process that the body wants to express itself. And so it's built on principles of Buddhism and Taoism and ultimately the psychodynamic tradition to create this really elegant way of unfolding core beliefs that shape our identity and uh, that we often are unconsciously carrying. And those beliefs tend to form in early childhood. And so Hakomi is a great way of like unwinding these developmental wounds and childhood traumas that we carry with us today in our body. Um, I'll pause there for now. There's so much more to say, but
Yeah, I'm
that's all.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And I'm really delighted to see more and more practitioners who are working with helping people to transform, heal, and awaken are bringing in these somatic approaches. Like Hakomi is for sure not the only one. It just happens to be around, studied, researched, and deeply practiced. So there's an actual transmission. There's a lineage there,
Right.
as opposed to like one person who had a discovery and kind of sharing it here and there. Um, it really, for me, is the most important thing in the inner work is really including the body, because otherwise conduct is not going to be affected. And in the Tibetan traditions, they say if you want to find out, well, two things, more than two, but two in general. You want to find out how enlightened the master is, and this sounds a little bit sexist, ask his wife,
Right. Right.
right? Or ask. It's probably not the same in the reverse. If it's a woman, she's probably much more embodied. Women, just due to the nature of the sensitivity, having a womb, and so many things, tend to, I think, not have as many of those same issues or in the same way. But really, if you want to find out how awake somebody is, look at their conduct. How many of us have had, you and I have had, things that we've had peak experiences, but they didn't become a stage that we were living from for some time. It was like a memory to talk about over cacao ceremony or something
Yeah.
like this, like, oh yeah, this big revelation. Yeah, but you're being an asshole right now. Like,
Right.
where's that revelation? Like, how is that informing your body, your posture, your spinal position, your breathing, and how you treat yourself and others in difficult moments or easy moments?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think those deeper layers can get unwound through the body through consistent revisiting of what it is that tends to be beneath the story. And so when we get to explore in this way, and to your point around working with men in particular, and I work with a lot of men, and I lead men's groups, and oftentimes men will come into this work, and it will be very foreign for them, and you actually have to spend a good deal of time just building some basic skills around mindfulness and getting comfortable in the body and resourcing and like what does it mean to actually be in the body without that being uncomfortable. And so the journey can start from in so many different places, and then also if a person's holding trauma where the body has been learned to be something that's unsafe, there it can actually be a much slower, delicate process to be able to get into that uh, richer territory. But then for others it just something clicks almost immediately, and they've done maybe years of traditional talk psychotherapy, but then when they come into the Hakomi space, just being given permission to settle into the body and just to see what is going to emerge, and then to keep following that thread with compassion and precision. Like for some people it's just an immediate unlock, and they have visits into the archetypical realm, the explorations of parts unwinding just dropped into deep samadhi and spiritual states with no background in really meditative training, or only minimal exposure there. And so it's really fascinating and continues to humble me. And the only other thing I want to mention, based on you brought this up, but I think is rather distinct about Hakomi from the other methods, is that Hakomi has been around now for, I want to say, 30 or 40 years, and it is it's part of the psychodynamic tradition, meaning that like really skilled therapists and psychologists have been studying it and practicing it and applying neuroscience along with mindfulness and cutting edge mind body science to really help understand like what it is that actually promotes long lasting change, to when those states can become traits. And I think that's a little different. And right now, there's like somatics is pretty buzzy and sexy. And yet, the Hakomi folks, like Hakomi is just kind of starting to raise an awareness. It's been a lot of these like therapists who are under the radar who are rather humble. And so it doesn't have the splashiness, a lot of the three-letter psycho therapeutic modalities that get a lot of airtime and have like a big founder who's doing a podcast circuit. And Hakomi's been a little different, and there's a lot of practitioners who have been using Hakomi in the psychedelic space, and a lot of the MAPS trained therapists have Hakomi backgrounds. Of course, they're separate paths. Hakomi just happens to be very beneficial for when people are in those expanded transpersonal states of consciousness. But yeah, it's been beautiful to witness it just starting to kind of come out and grow in terms of popularity and recognition in the culture.
Hmm. I'm really happy to hear that. Really, really happy to hear that. The more, the better. The more this awareness expands. I, I really, I really hope for a future. I try to vision a future where children are learning these things very early on, like learning the 5 forms of healthy attachment early on, and learning how to resource themselves and each other in community as the primary aspect of the educational system, not a side note.
Yeah, yeah. That one hits close to home, as I have a 13-month-old. And so thinking about what does it look like to raise a conscious boy in our modern world, and how do I want to shape him in ways that I wasn't given, in particular around presence and these tools of emotional regulation and attachment. I didn't know this actually until recently, but the style of parenting that Grace and I are uh, mostly practicing is called attachment style, and it's involves co-sleeping and spending a lot of time with your baby. And this is a controversial subject that we don't need to, because there's a lot of opinions on parenting, and there's no right
So
way.
many.
Yeah, there's no right way, of course. But to me, it just makes sense that you sleep with your kid, you spend time with them. It's how we've done it for thousands of years. And
But not only to concretely sleep with and spend time with, to be aware of mindfully, how is my nervous system regulated or organized as I'm spending time with or thinking about my child, because that's the real legacy that I'm transmitting to their nervous system.
Precisely, yeah. And that is the ultimate gift. And I think that's something that just being able to give the gift of spacious presence and awareness, and that having that spiritual foundation. Parenting has been very hard and humbling in all the ways. Like, I get why there's so much fear mongering around it now. At first I was like, oh, that's not going to be me. But what I will say is just having these tools of practices and meditation like really does transform it into something that I could see being like, whoa, this would be pretty intense and very difficult, to like, what a gift to be able to practice in every moment, not giving my son my crap and my baggage, and to just practice presence and that choice to be a little bit more compassionate, to do something that would be a step in a direction towards healing and wholeness, for him and for myself and for the lineage. And so Yeah, I really am so fortunate that I got my act together, so to speak, before having having a kid.
Have you noticed the importance? I mean, I see this with so many parents that their story is I don't have time for practices. The need for micro practices that can be practiced with will. I need the will and the discipline to insert them into my ordinary moments whenever I get a space, like in the bathroom or walking from the car to the house, like to use those pauses for micro practices rather than I can only practice when I have a whole hour or not at all.
Yeah, and that's something as well where going into this, I'd be like, well, I'm still going to do my sadhana. I hear other parents complaining about how there's no time. Like that's not going to be me. And now having been in it is like, okay, wow, there's it is a different relationship with free time. Like that is a major shift. And yet, like for me, I still try to prioritize having dedicated time to sit and practice. But to your point, like orienting towards the whole experience parenting, whether you're changing a diaper or taking my son on walks in the stroller in the hills, it's all opportunities to practice because that's the very tantric thread of parenting, is that you use all of it, whether you're you know i- like in a colicky conniption in the middle of the night and having to soothe them. I will try to chant mantras then and use the vibrational current to soothe both of our nervous system. But you really, yeah, orienting towards it's all practice, it's all grist for the mill. Has made it so enjoyable, and has
I
made the
just got to
times.
pause you right there. I'm just so stopped and moved by you holding your baby and singing to your baby. Not just you, but any man doing that.
Yeah.
I'm so touched and moved because as I listen to it, I'm having the experience of imagining being held and sung to in that way and how
Mm,
healing and soothing that is and wanting that for everybody to have that experience.
yeah.
Like that's a micro practice that anybody can do,
Yeah.
you know? And it's organizing your thought. Like I could be changing the colicky diaper. I don't know if I'm putting the things together in the right order there, if colicky implies diapers, but, or, like making warming the bottle or whatever. But like, I have a choice about what I'm doing with my thoughts, how I'm
Yeah.
directing the intentional mechanism while I'm doing any of those activities. And I could turn it into anything with my imagination. I could turn it into like, as I wash the baby, I'm washing all babies. As I wash my baby, I'm washing the baby enlightened Buddhas or what, like anything that could do that begins to expand my state that I'm sharing now with the baby and the entire neighborhood.
Yeah. I sing him some of the mantras you taught me, and I really try to vibrate those, and I use it as like so. I mean, and this is where like it's you could say a part of it is selfish, but it's also about service because I use it as like an opportunity to really come into the heart and get some meta and get like my own like, oh, I need to come back into the heart, and I'm gonna really like I think you would be proud of me, Scott. Like I've thought of you on several occasions when I'm at the in these rocking him and like really just trying to sink into my heart and to just make it be as pure and give him as much love and to channel that love through the mantras as much as possible. And it does something for both of us.
So
And
check this out. Maybe you already do this. So you're imagining yourself there, which is easy to do because you've got that somatic memory of holding him. So you're there, you're holding him, you're rocking him, and then you have this something arises and you go, wait, I too am being held. It doesn't look like a physical body, but it could be a masculine or feminine or a gender neutral, but I'm being held by this loving presence and make it as real as possible, holding me while I'm holding him. And
mm,
then it's not my personality that's making the offering, but the creative powers, the graceful powers of life itself. And I'm also teaching him that by practicing it without saying a word.
yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah, and that I do that's something I try to tap into, that transpersonal beyond the self sense of love. But that I love that, you know, being held by the mother while I hold him, so to speak. That's truly beautiful. I do find that there's something about the vibration of the mantra that seems to settle him more than anything else. And I
Yeah.
think I saw a video about that. And but then Grace and I have been practicing that, and there's definitely something to that. To
Well, an
that,
empowered
just
mantra has a transmission, no kidding, because these mantras weren't made up by somebody. They've been passed along in the ear whispered tradition from student, teacher to student, unbroken. So anybody in that entire lineage who's had realization of the fruit of the mantra, those realizations are right there energetically. And the more I relax the body, open my heart, and trust the faith, that's what's present. Like the outer letters and words of a mantra are just the clothing that the true mantra is wearing. The true
Mhm.
mantra is this self aware, unconstructed, empty luminosity.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
there's the vagal tone. You know, you study polyvagal theory, like making sound tones up the vagus nerve, the most important cranial nerve that has to do with resilience, mood, autoimmunity, and so on and so forth, and
Right.
co regulation through the sound and
The
so many
co-regulation through the
things.
sound, yeah, and the humming, yeah, even just the humming, yeah, it's something that's really, yeah. And so to like, but to your point, every moment can be a micro moment for practice. And so for me, it's like the Dzogchen style sky gazing on the walks, or even like getting him into the car. I have to be very mindful because I've blown out my back several times,
Oh,
because you're using your body in all these ways that are just totally novel. And I also have back problems to begin with, and so I have to be really mindful about just like where proprioceptively I am in space, and I'm engaging the core yet relaxing, right, the points of the body. And so it really is a practice. And I say this all because the alternative is to be distracted, disgruntled, frustrated. Like I do so much work on addiction and screen addiction, and I have courses on this. But I've noticed that parenting, it is really easy to get sucked into just like screen swiping and screen time, because you have a lot of downtime too, where you're sort of just with the baby while they're playing or sleeping. And
they feel that.
yeah, they feel it, and it is really easy. I'm someone who, like, I try to be really practiced in this, and I made great progress, but I noticed that it's very easy the way our society is set up to slip into the alternative, which is not practice in those micro hits, which I love that term. I think I first heard that from Shinzen Young, which is like you take micro hits of awareness or meditation, and I teach that in one of my courses as with a nice recovery flair, which is like, instead of taking your drug or your drink, take hits of awareness. And so I'm glad that you brought that in, because it's so important.
When I got that from Mahamudra, from Urgyen Rinpoche, who's
Mhm.
the writer that the being that he was, the Lama that he was, is deceased. I don't know if his new incarnation is around, but he's echoing this Mahamudra's Dzogchen teaching, which is small recognitions, many small recognitions all day long. Not recognizing is samsara. Samsara is the experience of pain and suffering through attaching my state, my happiness, my well-being to things that are transient and temporary. And so when I can recognize, and for some people that's not yet happening or not yet available, but when can I recognize that everything is already enlightened, everything is already awake, everything is already whole, and I can somehow proprioceptively sense into this, just briefly touch it and let my nervous system be touched by it, and then let it go and do it again and again. It dissolves the problematic self-cherishing. It dissolves the grasping and the pushing away. And it opens so many resources cognitively and creatively and intuitively.
Hmm. And how would because you mentioned some people won't get the recognition yet.
Just
And
yet.
so how would you describe that? Like, for someone who's new to it, or is like, what do you mean
I
recognize?
wouldn't. I would be actually not trying to get them to become aware of awareness too soon,
Yeah.
unless they start to become available. What I would start to develop with them more and more is metacognition, growing their metacognitive skills. Their metacognitive skills and their verbal and nonverbal collaborative skills. This is straight from Dan Brown for the healing of attachment wounding. Three things, the three pillars are developing greater metacognition, developing greater and greater verbal and nonverbal collaborative skills, meaning if somebody's walking at me on the side of the sidewalk that I think should be mine, let me just move out of the way like a cork in water rather than becoming an obstacle and puffed up and righteous. Let me become more collaborative with the whole field. If the wind is blowing, I don't need to fight the wind. If it's raining, I don't need to fight the water. I can put up an umbrella or just dance in the rain or go inside. Verbal and nonverbal collaboration. And then the ideal parent figure protocol, which is a meditative way of imagining, and imagination doesn't mean fake. It's a going beyond linear thought to open to more of what's available, and having the feeling, bringing the feeling into my nervous system. What would I be feeling if totally enlightened, totally loving, totally attuned parent figures were sitting with me right now? Maybe they're touching me, maybe they're just smiling at me, maybe they're just listening, and get familiar with that. So those three things are what I work on, because when those three things grow in a person, there's a releasing in the attentional mechanism enough that then awareness can be pointed out. But before that, if I point out awareness, it's just another thought they're having. It's not actually something transformational or useful yet. It's just a thought they're having. It's a concept. It's an object. They've turned awareness into an object. Awareness is the ultimate subject. It can't be objectified. It's vaster than the mind could ever imagine itself to be.
I love that.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
This is the question I ask every guest. And it starts with a quote, one of my favorite quotes from Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who opened the Zen Center of San Francisco in the 60s. And you've heard me say this quote, so you maybe know what I'm going to say. Death is certain, the time is not. So what is the most important thing, Alex?
The most important thing, and I've been playing with this, is like I'm trying to imagine, okay, what if this were my last moment? Like, what would I do? How would I want to face death and enter that bardo state? And the thing that I've come back to it more over and over is to just relax and to let go. And for me, that I think is also what from my healing journey, what I've needed the most is to just let go and just relax and to be okay. But that quote really brings up is like, yeah, what I've really tried to inquire and contemplate on, like, if it were my last moments, like, what would I want to do? Like, I want to replay throughout my entire life? Would I want to send love to the people I care most about? Would I want to think about my son, Grace, my parents, my family? And what I've come back to is like, yes, all that is great, but really I would want it to go with as much peace and relaxation in my heart as possible. And so for me, that's the most important thing, to just relax and to be present for what's here and what's right in front of me.
What's
And these
here
days for
about
me,
that is to
that
say thank you for
say it
that.
again. Oh,
What's
yeah.
here is just like, thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And, and for me these days, it's like also relaxing into the most important thing, which is, my son who's in front of me. And that's just, he's right there, it's right there appearing in the field. And he's so just beaming and cute. And it's been a very profound teacher to just like, I just can just be there attuned to him, and that's it. And I don't have to do anything, accomplish anymore. And I get even emotional thinking about and feeling into that, because that was the thing that I was looking for so long, and in all the wrong places. And yet, as we know, there was never a hair out of place. But
It all led to this moment.
yeah, right.
The paradox right there. I've noticed this over many years of working with people who are parents. It's just my anecdotal observation, but it feels really, really real, that every age that one's child is unlocks the unconscious storehouse wider in the parent's life. It makes it more accessible, that whatever was there or happened at that age, even if I don't have a story about it. So for you, 13 months would be pre-rational. but it is opening up that pre-rational space where so much data came into all of our nervous systems before we had words and thoughts and the ability to ask for things. So much was happening, and we were aware and active. And those things are stored as impressions, but because we don't have words for them, we may not notice that they need to be picked up and held and worked with.
I have noticed that it in the way that you're describing, parenting really does point to what is going on in deep within you. And on that front, I feel like the thing that I've noticed most is just like the something around really like trust and safety in the body, because there's something really primal and pure just about having a baby who's just totally okay being naked, and I take baths with him where he's just sitting in my lap, and there's something just very uh, back to the basic instinct that this is I can notice it's doing some work on me in that domain, and creating a trust in life and in my body. um, and then also to the pre-rational, I think the thing that's really come online for me in the last 13 months has been just this non-conceptual play and awareness. And because when you're really, the way to attune with a, a child this young is that you're not doing anything conceptually or with thought, but you're just feeling and making faces and giggling and sort of just attuning in that way. And so that's also been something that I feel has been deeply healing and just soul nourishing for me.
Hmm. This feels like a natural transition moment where we can put a bookmark in for today. Is there anything, let's just imagine everything you did, wrote, recorded was erased, and you find out it's going to be your last hour. What would you want to leave us with
Hmm.
in this world?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to actually pretend it's real. So what the thing that comes up is that healing is possible. And I say that because I was someone who was in such a pained and depressed, unwell place that for a long, long time, I didn't know it was possible to be any other way. And so I think the thing that I'd want to offer people is that it is radically within your reach to change your life in this very moment in a way that you could not even imagine. And that feels like the probably the most important thing that I'd want to offer right now is just that so much more is possible in the realm of human flourishing and well-being and happiness. And if you earnestly follow whatever little compulsive thread that you might be dealing with, or addiction, and you really follow that thread all the way to the bottom of that inquiry, you'll find that. And that's my hope, and that's my wish for what others can experience too. Is like I feel very fortunate to be alive, and I feel even more fortunate to have found the sort of presence and awareness that you were just describing. And my hope is that more and more people who are open to that get to experience it.
Thank you so much for everything you've done and been through, including sacrifices you've made that no one will ever know about, to be able to show up as a loving dad, a loving partner, a friend, and for sure all the healing that's able to be offered to the willing through you, and to be here today with me sharing this space. It's been very uplifting, nourishing, regulating. So with all of my heart, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Scott. This also was a true joy for me. And so I'm feeling I'm going to really be taking some of that enlightened, attuned, present parent with me. Like, so thank you for that. Like that I'm feeling that in my body, and I'm going to carry that with me today.
I love that. So everybody, we're going to do, if you're new, we take some silence. So if you remember the entry into the episode where I'm inviting you to Inhale deeply and exhale slowly like you're setting down a heavy burden. Soften your hands and feet. We'll be together in silence as we end this, just to notice what's here, what's present, what's shifted in you as you've been listening to this episode. And we'll see you in the next episode. You can catch up with Alex through the show notes, read his Substack, listen to his videos, and so much more. So let's drop into the silence together. Loving the episode? Click to follow, like, and share it as widely as possible. Want to go deeper with the choice to grow? Explore the show notes. You'll find links there for going deeper with our guests, as well as how to work with me in the work of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to join you in the next episode.